Welcome to the Uncommon Career Podcast, helping you to find God's calling for your career and to land a fulfilling, well-paid, and impactful position. Join me each week for practical guidance, career motivation, and biblical insight based on Christian values. Hey friend, so do you know what salary to negotiate for when you get your offer? Well, stay tuned because in the next several minutes, I'm going to show you a 4-step process to help you figure that out. Hey everyone, my name is Patricia, and if we haven't met before, I make content on career, faith, and mindset. And I encourage you that if you like what I'm doing, go ahead and support with a like and subscribe on YouTube or rate and review on the podcast. Now with that, let's go ahead and get into this content. All right, so as for steps, we're going to start with the very first step, and that is to find your industry ranges. The first thing you want to do is go from the most, wild or chaotic place to look for industry ranges. So we're going to start with Google. You're just literally going to put in the title and then just type in salary after that. There's different ways you can search it, but that's just one way. So type in your title and then the word salary, and you should be able to find different resources to sort of, start to look and write down some benchmarks, save some links, and figure out which ones are more credible, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. All right, so we got the most chaotic and the wildest one down. Then I'd go over to crowdsource websites such as glassdoor.com or salary.com. That way you get the input from folks that are in the industry. And even though some may be older, some may be newer, you want to take that and sort of get a ballpark range. Keep in mind that if you're able to see dates for the salary that was provided, that, you figure out the percent increase for inflation purposes and for, just the fact that a salary in the 90s is not the same as a salary today. All right, then you've got a website that I think is really good. I think it's a golden nugget. So many people don't know about it. And to be honest, I've even seen some coaches offer it as some sort of a bonus. Like, hey, if you buy my course now, you're going to get this as a bonus. And I kind of find that interesting because this is a free website that's available to anybody as long as you know the website name. So I'm just going to give it to you. I hope that you're encouraged by this week's episode. In order to continue the work, I need your help. A free, fast, and really easy way to support me and the Uncommon Career Podcast is to rate and review. If you're on Apple Podcast, you can even do it now while you're listening. You ready? Okay, grab your phone and head to the Uncommon Career Podcast show page. You're going to scroll down, and below the list of episodes, you just tap the 5-star rating. If you have just one more minute, then please also tap write a review and let me and others know which episode or topic impacted you the most. It means the world to me to hear from you, and it also helps others to see that this work is making an impact. Rate and review today and help us move the message forward. It's randstadusa.com. randstadusa.com. And on this website, you can click on job seekers and then salary for job seekers, and you can find almost any position's salary range, and you can find it by major city. Now, not every city is represented there, but you've got, a lot of the major cities across the US. So that can give you an idea of where your range should be according to a standard. And then finally, 2 other websites you might look at for salary ranges include onetonline.org and bls.gov. So onetonline.org and bls.gov. So these 2 are government-ran agencies or government-ran websites that provide you information across the nation, and you can also search it by zip code and by state. So this gives you a good, range of different salaries to look for. Once you've looked for your salary range on all 4 of these types of websites, you're going to have a much more solid idea as to how much you should be making in any one position. Okay, so with that in mind, let's step into step number 2. Oh, you like that? Let's step into step number 2. All right, moving on. Okay, so step number 2 is to consider the contributing factors. So you've got your range, but it's a range for a reason. It's not static in that it's the same for everybody. Now, there's so many different contributing factors, including location, years of experience, format, scope of work, overall package beyond the salary, your unique potential contribution, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, here's the thing to remember. When you're figuring out your salary, keep in mind that there are going to be folks in the same industry, in the same position, that do amazing work. They make a huge impact, intangible and tangible impact on the company. And because they weren't able to negotiate, or they didn't assert themselves, or they didn't try to negotiate at all, for whatever reason, they can be making significantly less than someone who could potentially be doing mediocre work, doesn't really put the time in to do good, impactful work at the company. Their bottom line is not bringing in as much as this other person who's such a hard worker. And yet, because they negotiated well, they are making significantly more. That is one of the factors that we are going to basically throw out. So I'm not going to include that as a contributing factor, because the goal is that with what you learn in this podcast episode, you are able to negotiate your salary so that you get fair compensation, meaning your compensation is in alignment with everybody else in the field. Now, if you get compensation that's well above what everyone else in the field is making, then hey, more power to you. I am glad this was helpful. But for now, we're focusing on that fair compensation, right? And so you're going to look at your range based on the starting point, which is the websites that I told you about a minute ago. And then you want to look at those contributing factors. So if you are in a city that is really large, like a metropolitan area, like Florida, Florida's a state, but let's say Miami. Let's say Miami, New York, Orange County, Dallas, etc. So those locations tend to be paid more highly. And you can actually see this almost like very concretely in Own It Online, on the Randstad website, and on BLS.gov. So that should already kind of be taken care of for you. In addition to that, you want to look at years of experience. Now, oftentimes you might think, okay, how many years of experience do I have? But really, I would look at the job description and how many years of experience it is asking for. Now, of course, you've got to take this with a grain of salt, because sometimes job descriptions will A, be unrealistic as to the requirements, and B, not actually hold to their requirements. So again, in some cases they will, but in some cases they won't, in which case the whole years of experience in the job description may or may not be accurate to what you're trying to calculate. It is, part art, part science calculating your fair compensation. So FYI. You also want to look at format. If you're online, that means that a company in California could be hiring people from Oklahoma or Utah because the cost of living is less there. And so they don't anticipate paying them California salary. They anticipate paying them Utah or Oklahoma salary. So you can see how that would impact the salary range and the fair compensation that you are specifically going for. Also consider the scope of work. There could be two people with the same salary, one of which is at a multi-billion-dollar company and another of which is at a very small startup. Now recognize that when you're at a startup, the workload is heavier for the most part. I mean, it can work in so many different ways to where the larger company is heavier, but when you're at a startup, there's a lot of flexibility, a lot of change, a lot of hurry up and wait kind of thing. Like you work as hard as you can, and then we got this pivot, and then you've got to go and change things up. And there's a lot of change and flexibility involved in that. And so I've seen a lot of startup companies offer actually more than the larger companies because of that level of change, flexibility, and expectation. Then you also want to look at the overall package. One company might offer you a lower salary, but the benefits are so good that it outweighs another company's salary. That could include contributions to 401ks. It could include, amazing benefits. I mean, health insurance can be, goodness, $800, $900 into the $1,500 mark, depending on how large your family is. So that can make a pretty big difference when it comes to your overall package. And then of course, look at your unique potential for contribution. If you have a skill set that is not available anywhere else, it's relatively rare, then you know that you should be able to negotiate a little bit more than if you didn't have that skill set. Okay, so that is step 2. Okay, so step 1, start doing your research, find online information. Step 2, start moving the levers up and down. Should I make a little bit more because of my location? A little bit less because of my years of experience? A little bit more because of the scope of work? A little bit less because they're offering me these great benefits? A little bit more because I have unique potential for contribution with my unique skill set and my years of experience in that skill set and my, undeniable accomplishments in that skill set? You can see what I mean, that you're kind of pulling the lever up and down a little bit to figure out where you're going to land. Okay, so now step 3 is to triangulate your online research. Now, triangulate basically just means find multiple points of information. And what I recommend to do is to see if you can do some informational interviews, maybe even talk to some company insiders. Remember that regardless, you're going to see some wildly different salaries for a couple different reasons. And this is why I want you to triangulate your research. Because there could be wildly different salaries with the entire, online business and startup movement. There's so many new online businesses taking place. A lot of them are in the tech industry, and some of these positions won't even be listed on, say, Own It Online or BLS.gov, for example, because these positions are relatively new. I remember when virtual reality and augmented reality was just barely getting started, no one had information on these positions because we were still, as an industry, not that I'm in that industry, but the industry was still figuring out what the standard was, where it was going to land, what the value of these skills was. And of course, in the beginning, when you look at supply and demand, in the beginning, it was much higher. And as more and more people get educated, it might shift a little bit. So it all depends on this whole supply and demand, and of course, the value of the work that's being done. All right, so number 1, start your research through online websites. Number 2, consider the contributing factors. And as you're narrowing down, you want to triangulate your research ideally through informational interviews with company insiders. But, sometimes it's possible, sometimes it's not. But remember, LinkedIn is so powerful, and hopefully you're able to find someone to talk with. All right, so step 4, what's the final step? The final step is to take all the information that you've learned and to start to narrow down a minimum, a fair, and an ideal compensation. Minimum means that I am willing to take as little as XYZ amount, so long as it's an ideal position. The reason why I help you come up with minimum, fair, and ideal compensation is because I don't want you to take a mediocre job for a minimum salary. So having a minimum, a fair, and ideal compensation means that you're willing to take the minimum compensation if the position is everything you've ever wanted. You've got a fair compensation if the position meets industry standard, it aligns with your experience, and it seems like a fair deal. Okay, fine. Of course, you're always going to try to negotiate more. I mean, come on. Why not, right? Like, you're always going to try to negotiate more, but you're willing to take a job at the fair compensation rate. Now, your ideal compensation is the compensation that you're thinking, you know what? This is on the higher end. It's kind of a stretch. Kind of like when you apply to colleges, you have your slam dunk, the school you're going to get into. And then you have the school that may be a little bit of a reach. And then you've got like the Ivy League where you're like, I'm going to apply to Harvard. And if I make it, wow, that's by the glory of God, right? That's your ideal compensation. That's the compensation that's on the higher end of the hiring range, might even be a little bit of a reach for you. And the reason you have that ideal is because, of course, you want to get there. But also, if you have a job that is amazing, that's offering you the higher end, but doesn't have some of your key factors, that ideal hiring range is a trigger for you to say, okay, I'm willing to compromise on some factors. So even though I didn't want to do an in-person job, they're offering me the ideal compensation. So am I willing to do an in-person job? So that's why you want to have a minimum, fair, and ideal compensation, because it helps you to sort of put boundaries around what you will and won't take and under which conditions. So you take the minimum if it's your ideal position. You're willing to take a less than ideal position, and you're willing to compromise on some factors if you get the ideal salary. Okay, so now that you calculated what your work is worth, get ready, because in a few weeks, I'm going to show you salary negotiation tips and facts that you didn't know you needed, but are going to make a huge difference at the negotiations table. All right, friends, it has been a blast talking to you about salary because I think more folks need to know about this. The word needs to spread. So if you're in the middle of your job search and you're trying to figure out how much you're going to make or how you're going to negotiate, then definitely bookmark this podcast episode and then stick around, because again, I'm going to show you how to negotiate that in the next few episodes. And other than that, know that I love you. I'm praying for you, and I'll see you on the next one. Thanks for listening. You came to the right place if you're seeking career direction, are ready to launch your career, if you're looking to change positions, or you want to secure the best offer for your next role. And I've created some resources just for you to help you along the way. First, hear his voice with the 5 steps to God's will for your career. Second, organize your career search. I've got a career transition checklist with 7 career phases and over 30 bite-sized strategies for you to check off along the way. Or grab the Bible-based Mindset Fix. It's a collection of scripture to help you apply truth to negative thoughts so that you can get unstuck and go after your position. Finally, if you have a question that hasn't been answered, then send it in. Email me your question, and not only will I answer it, but I'll also give you a shout out on the episode as well. Again, thanks for listening, and I'll see you on the next one.